Welcome to this episode of Next Slide Please, a podcast where we try our very best to help non-designers up their presentation game and help designers to hate PowerPoint slightly less.
So today's guest is Damon Nofar. He's the founder and creative director of Slides.agency. He's a presentation strategist, a familiar face to anyone who's spent some time in the presentation design community. He's one of those designers who's also a great presenter, which I think is a rarity in our industry. Damon, you can't miss the look and feel of his posts or of the design work that he does. We wanted to get Damon on to learn a little bit more about what's behind that design, how his agency works, etc. He's a knockout presenter. He's going to be presenting at Present to Succeed in London. Is that right, Damon?
Yes.
And that's going to be in November. And if you didn't see his presentation from last year, then I highly recommend that you check that out. It's really an interesting presentation about AI. But anyway, so without any further ado, Damon, your work has an unmistakable look and feel. When I see one of your posts or I see one of your presentations, I know that that's one of your presentations. It's really clear. When I look on your profile in LinkedIn, I see that you've got a background in marketing and advertising, but not so much in design. You took a specialty course in design. Can you tell us how you got into this and what is the connection with advertising in your work?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. My background is in business and marketing. I never really had any design people around me when I was younger. No people in my family or friends were designers. But it's true that I always appreciated good design. So when I would see creative marketing campaigns or good messaging or clever copywriting, that would always catch my eye. But it wasn't until I took one of those specialty courses in design, I took some courses in marketing psychology, where I really started to play around with my slide designs at university. And since there were no guidelines to follow there, I had total creative freedom. I could just go nuts with my slides. I played with typography, all kinds of creative assets in my presentations. And you guys know, if you remember, how slides used to look back in university. And it probably still does, because professors, and no disrespect, but obviously they don't have time, energy, or interest in creating creative slides. They just want to transfer their information, and it's usually in bullet point format because students want the slides afterwards. So I used to do this back in 2012, 2013, and then I started sharing tips online, and that's really how Slides Agency started. But I think, to your point, my background in marketing has definitely helped shape the work we do, because we don't see slides as just a tool to transfer information.
No.
We start to view slides instead as marketing material, right? We view slides as this reflects who we are as a company. This can be a make it or break it moment. And obviously, when you start to look at it like that, then you start to treat slides differently. You focus on your message, you focus on your design, your typography. And that's really how I got into this space. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm everything you just said there, exactly the same. Coming from a creative agency background, there's so many things, boxes that need to be ticked before it leaves the four walls of the office that you cannot get right, cannot get wrong, or you get your knuckles wrapped. Like, you let that leave the building. So yeah, and I carried that through when I went client side as well. So yeah, we're on the same page, mate. Absolutely. I'm going to rewind back to last summer in your presentation that Present to Succeed in Sevilla. And the whole thing was about AI, right? Every presenter was talking about AI tools and what to do and what not to do. So very much around, you were talking about using AI and bringing AI elements into a presentation as opposed to using AI to create a presentation. Where are we between where we were then and where we are now? How has it evolved? What tools are we using? What tools are you preferring? And what's the difference between then and now?
Yeah, the conversation with AI in our industry, it's always been click to generate your presentation in a matter of seconds, right? That's been the marketing material from these companies. Click to generate that story, click to generate your slides. And I never understood it because I don't think the technology is there, even though it's come very far. It's definitely not there yet. So that's what I meant when I said that we focus mostly on using AI for the content, for the copy, for the messaging, for that strong title and so forth. What's changed, I would say, is that we've started working a lot in building out these mini tools, which I've started to share a bit more on LinkedIn. I can give you some examples that I note down here. So, for example, we did some work with a client where we needed some abstract gradient backgrounds, basic stuff that we do a lot. We tend to do it in Figma, and we export it into PowerPoint. But when we were working with that, we thought, why couldn't we try building an app for that, where you can set some parameters and you can adjust those. Maybe you can add some subtle motion to the gradients, and you could export that as a video or a GIF or an image file and import it into PowerPoint. And it came out great. What do we use for that? We're using Google AI Studio mainly. I think that works really well. I've also started to using Gemini a lot. So I feel like ChatGPT, although it's great, it's gotten worse. That's my impression. I don't know why. It feels like it's always trying to please you. It always tries to keep the conversation going instead of just answering your question, right? Are you
Yeah,
guys
want your
feeling the same?
tokens.
What did you say?
I mean,
Tokens?
They want the token. Keep talking.
you want
Ka-ching.
all of them want your tokens. Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of depends on what I'm trying to do. Sometimes I prefer ChatGPT. Sometimes I love Claude. Sometimes I don't like Claude because of what it doesn't do. So, yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the task, which is something that I think you were bringing up.
It's interesting what you say about the people pleaser. I think they've all got a little bit of that. And I was saying to these guys the other week, I use Gemini. I find Gemini quite people pleasing. My partner works for Google, and she tells me there are some settings you can put into it, but I think it might be only on a beta that they're using internally. And you can change the temperature of like being like kiss ass, for want of another word, or being a bit more critical. Whereas I find Claude really a little bit more pragmatic, and I often use them as bad cop and good cop. And when I've got an answer from Gemini, I'll then take it to Claude and see what it says, and it'll usually be quite scathing. But that could be just like a company thing. I don't know. It's interesting.
I'm getting bang into the skills. I'm finding that the skills in Claude are helping me to shape what I want, and I'm getting stuff out of it because I can see the responses I'm getting back. It's referring to the predefined do's and don'ts that I'm giving it, and over time that's only going to build. And I guess the others do a similar thing, but I'm just getting on with Claude. I find that's a really weird thing to say, but it's just. And I think what's going to be really interesting is you remember back in the day, way back when it was like Mac versus PC. Are you a Mac person or a PC person? It's going to be like that, like times 100.
Yeah, and I think people will probably start to use their own. They will stick to one or two tools, because what happens is that you create that context and that memory, and it just produces better results for you. So if you guys would go to Google AI Studio and type in the same prompt as me, you wouldn't get the same results, because I've with the iterations we've done, it's starting to know my likes. It starts to get it right straight away. And I think that's where we're headed. It just sucks to change and switch between tools, and they don't have the context of your previous conversations and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
So
I
yeah,
mean,
go ahead.
AI is getting better at what it does. Obviously, it's every few weeks, Claude has got a new iteration that we need to be checking out. You're still not using it for layout because it's good for doing like basic layout if you've got a discovery call or something like that. I use it for basic layout, etc. Not something I would ever share with anyone else other than just to get some ideas flowing, etc. Are you still not using it for layout? Still, it's more for content generation for elements that you're putting into presentations.
I mean, the way we use it for layout, the best example is one that I shared some month ago on LinkedIn. We were doing some work for a client called Filmworks, and they needed to present lots of portfolio work. So they needed different creative layouts of their images, 5, 6, 7 images on a slide. And we could
Okay.
sit there and tweak and come up with stuff. But we built an app where you can set how many images do you want? Do you want rounded corners, sharp corners? How much gap do you want? How much gutter? And we could just generate a bunch of different layouts, export it as SVG, bring it into PowerPoint, ungroup them, and intercept images into those shapes. And
Interesting.
it
That's
just
really
sped
interesting.
up our workflow so much, and we could turn those SVGs into image placeholders in the master. It just came out great. So in that aspect, we do use it for layouts, but never where it generates all of the slide content and everything.
Yeah.
It's more for sketching ideas, as you say.
Well, that's still doing the heavy lifting, though, right? You're still in control. You're still in control of the actual deck and narrative, but you're just going, well, we've got a problem to solve. Let's go and get something to do it for us. What I
Yeah.
think would be really interesting for me, definitely, and I think anyone who's listening to this would be what a very, very short bullet point version of your process to get to that app. Because I looked at some of the stuff you were putting up on LinkedIn and going, that's really cool. How did you make that? And I realized you can ask it to tell you how to make it, if that makes sense.
Exactly. And that's the simple answer. I usually use Gemini or ChatGPT. I explain what I want to do and I say, give me a good prompt to create this. Keep in mind, do mention the technology in the backend because I have no idea. So tell me what to use, what tech works best for this. Is it React? Is it Java? What is it? And it gives me the prompt. I start with that. And depending on what comes out, I can go back and forth and tweak that. But it's normal. What do you say? Most of the questions or doubts we have, we do ask the AI to fill in the blanks there. Like,
I think
I'm not
that's the secret, because my trepidation at first was like, I don't know how to do this. And then I'd listening to a similar podcast. I listen to the really, really techie, nerdy ones that sometimes terrify me. And then sometimes I get a light bulb moment. And the light bulb moment was just ask it. And I started to ask Claude, well, how would I go about doing this? And it made me the prompt. And I was like, oh, that's actually a huge barrier that is, now I look at it, is actually really small. But the first time you come up
Yeah.
against it, it's huge. It's like,
Yeah, I think like a couple of years ago, it was AI in the earlier days was all about, oh, you've got to get the right prompt. And there was these guys with job titles called prompt engineers and stuff, right? And you're like, oh my God. And that's what kind of put me off. And now I think it's really moved into, I'm just conversational with it. And like you say, if you do want something a bit more advanced, then you just ask it and it'll give you everything you need. Damon, one thing I wanted to ask you was, we've been playing around with a bit of Claude within PowerPoint. So again, if we go back to that conference last year, the sort of, as Andy was saying, the idea was AI creates the stuff, but PowerPoint is still kind of the daddy. Have you and your team played around with that very much? There's a lot of talk about, if you've got a lockdown template and then you've got Claude in your PowerPoint, they could work together quite nicely, So it's not a complete blank slate, but it's putting content into your already locked down template. Is that anything you've played with?
To be honest, I haven't played with Claude myself. I know
Okay.
people who have, some people in my network have, and the experience has been that it's good at organizing information. So it does structure information into columns. It can create nice bullet points. I've started to identify slides that have been created by Claude already. Like you can see a lot of them have boxes with a little colored sidebar in the corner. It's like Claude does that a lot. We had some clients that use Claude, and the slide at first glance, you're like, okay, this looks quite decent, like design wise, like it has consistent columns and bullets and so forth. But it doesn't stand out. It's quite basic. And someone said something great. He said, we get impressed by the stuff we don't know. So when a non-designer sees what Claude creates, it gets amazed. It's like, wow, this looks amazing. The same way that if I go to Google AI Studio and I produce something with code, I don't know code, I get amazed with whatever. You do something that just blinks at me and I'm like, wow, this looks absolutely stunning. Or the ticker I did, the count up ticker I shared on LinkedIn the other day. Like a programmer sees that and he will be like, guys, this is basic. how can you be impressed?
I follow some UX designers called the Design Collective, and they're actually really surprised by what Claude is producing in terms of the web space and web design. I think that's probably because the best tools out there are the AI-driven design tools are focused on the web. Template-driven design has been in the world of web designers for over a decade now. I mean, Squarespace was launched 15 years ago, and Claude works in HTML. So I think the output is always going to be better than it's going to be in a PowerPoint file or a Google file or something, because that's native for AI to be working in. My point here is when I watch them, they are really surprised by what Claude does. Not from so much the design aspect, because I think you're right, it does do those colored sidebars that always look like Claude, etc. But they're seeing a level of work in the output that they don't see in other AI-driven design tools. And I think as presentation designers, we got to keep an eye on that space, because that's what's coming for us next. I think everything's got to be moving to that HTML. I mean, they're saying now that markdown files are going to be switching over from MD to HTML, because there's a richness to the data that you can have in an HTML file. And I think presentations are going to be going to HTML eventually. If you ask Claude to do a really interesting design, it does something very static when it comes to presentations. But if you ask it to do something with animations, it actually gives you an HTML file, and then you get all of the builds and the sort of things that we're thinking that we think is good in terms of delivering information. So I think we really got to keep an eye on that space in the web design world, because it is making inroads in their area. I think it's coming for us. It may be a few years off, but it's coming to change our industry too.
So with the thought of it's coming for us, which is, quite scary, and I'm looking out the window at dark clouds over here, and they're coming for us too. If
It's sunny
AI
here.
fully took over our world, do you have a plan B? Do you have a side hustle? Do you have a different project? What would you do if you couldn't presentation design anymore?
I would start a olive oil shop.
Love it.
Maybe. No, but I think I'm glad you asked that question, because I think it's a very valid question, but I would like to push back on it a bit, because we can all agree that it's definitely going to change our industry. I think we can all agree that Windows and everyone else, they're working on their agents that in the near future, you should be able to just click a button and it will know your brand guidelines. It will know your presentations and everything.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it should be able to create something beautiful almost instantly, right? That's going to happen. There's no doubt. But the question I would say is, what happens next? What if everybody starts to have access to really polished and beautiful slides? Then obviously that stops being the differentiator, right? So what's the differentiator then? Maybe it's stronger storytelling. Maybe it's more originality, more emotional impact, more creative thinking. And that's where I think us as creatives, we will become more valuable. If we start to, instead of asking what happens if AI comes for us or takes our jobs, let's think about what becomes more valuable in a world where everything looks like it was generated by AI. Like we just mentioned some of the stuff we see that Claude is producing. And if everybody's slides look nice and structured and aligned with brand, then maybe we start to look for something else that stands out. What do you think?
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's always a bit like there's always a way, right? So if you remember, like a long time ago, photography was it was okay, right? And then it was like I had a film camera when I was a kid, and that was okay. And then it took a while, and then we moved digital, and that was great. And then there was too much digital, and then everything was too perfect, right? So then it was like, okay, what's next? So next was like filters, and now like every other deck I see has got a really grainy background because people want grain back because like perfection is too perfect. And so you're right, like if AI goes there, everybody's like, okay, well, what's who's made a deck by cutting pieces of paper out and gluing them together so that it looks different? You're right. There'll always be a way. But I am very interested in your olive oil pressing situation.
I'd buy it.
Well, I think your talk comes up again when we think about this, because it's not just about making nice looking slides, right? Even if AI actually produces some lovely slides, it's not about that. You talked about audience experience, which I think is, we hear in presentation design all the time that you have to focus on the audience. But when you talked about audience experience, I think it kind of went to another level there when you were talking about AX. And can you talk about that and what you shared with the audience last year in Sofia?
Yeah, so that was the talk last year where I raised the point that the audience experience will never disappear despite the tech behind it. And it's really that whole idea of, instead of most presentations do start with, what do I want to say? What information do I want to share with my clients, my audience, or whoever? But if you start flipping that around and thinking instead, what does the audience need from me? What do they already know? What don't they understand yet? What questions are they asking, and so forth? Then I think that will definitely help you create much better content. And with presentations, when we talk about it like this, in a setting like this, we need to generalize a lot since there are so many presentation settings, right? I mean, a sales deck is not a keynote talk. A board meeting is not an investor deck. And then you have geographic differences. A German audience is not a Spanish audience, and so forth.
Amen.
So actually, the talk that's coming up now in November is called Design the Feeling in the Room, which ties back to that as well. The whole idea about, think about the feeling you want to leave behind. So when I'm creating a keynote talk, the feeling I want to leave with the audience is excitement, curiosity. I want people to be entertained. And I use that to develop my content, basically.
I'm glad you mentioned that because that was going to be my next question. So you messed up the order completely, Damon. Thanks for that.
But I actually have a good example of that. So for example, here in Spain, when we talk about designing the feeling, here in Spain, we have a lot of phone marketing. People just calling our phones all day, every day, trying to market their services. And obviously I hang up. The moment they say I call for center, blah, 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 I just hang up because it doesn't interest me. And the other day someone called and he said, before you hang up, give me 20 seconds. If I don't make you smile, you can hang up. And I thought that was hilarious. And I said, okay, go ahead. And he went ahead and I hung up after 20 seconds, but still. He got my attention because he broke the
20
script.
seconds though, right?
Yeah, exactly. Most people don't get 3. So think about that when you're giving a talk, I would say.
I'm going to add to that, and the context of what you're talking about there is going into an event and holding court in front of 300, 400, 500 people. In a more real world scenario, if you go into a meeting room and you're either going in there to internally to go, my team needs funding next quarter, right? That's a real world scenario, right? Or even more, even bigger, new business pitch, whether you're a creative agency, like going in there and wowing them with all the strategy slides first, and then we're going to show you the creative, and they show all the creative work. But any of that, the decision won't be made in the room. The decision will be made a week later, 2 weeks later, a month later. So you need to be compelling and memorable. So to Mark's point, if everything's too perfect. But yeah, I like the guys. Who are the guys who had the ripped paper? I like the guys with the so and so agency. I like what they were saying. They were saying strategically all the same as the other three guys that were pitching, but the difference was the creative was good, and they spent an extra couple of hours, days, what have you, on getting that deck absolutely singing. And the difference was they were remembered a week or two later. And I went, yeah, I like where they were coming from. They said the same as everyone else, but I just got a feeling I could get on with them. And that is what's going to get you a pitch. And it could be that much difference.
Very good point. Yeah.
Fine margins. You and your team have built a lot of presentations for all kinds of different industries and all sorts of settings, like you were just talking about. Is there anything that you prefer to build? Any particular area that kind of ticks your boxes?
I've thought about this question a lot because right now I'm in the process of rebranding my agency. I've been there for the last year or so, and I'm trying to find the best positioning for us because I struggle with this because on one hand, you don't want to leave any work on the table. So you try to position yourself as the presentation agency for brands, all teams, startups, speakers, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, what work do we love the most doing? What makes us excited? And the more I think about it, the more the answer becomes startups and scale-ups. Because I noticed that every time we work with a startup who's either raising their seed round or Series A, we really love that process of helping them get their style in shape. Maybe we help them define the first parts of their brand. We help them go from a very technical presentation to something that people can actually understand. And that's what I love, which is usually something that you do. These projects span maybe 1, 2, or 3 weeks because, these guys move really fast. Whereas when you work with bigger corporations or do big must templates, the work can go on for months. And at some point, the joy starts to diminish a bit. So that's where I'm at right now. And to be fully transparent, I think if you find the right startups, they also have the bigger budgets to play with. That's at least my experience.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I also found about startups, that's interesting you say that. They're a lot more open to being a lot more creative, right? And doing that thing we were just talking about that differentiator, that what's different, what's new, what can make us stand out, because the people they sit in front of see hundreds of pitch decks, every month. And so they need to be that one that really jogs the memory. And so, yeah, I've had a lot of fun with that. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
I think there's a lot more possibility when you're dealing with a startup. Everything's fresh and new, and you're not just kind of working within the guidelines of the brand, etc. I think you can kind of push the envelope a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to name any names, but we worked with a big brand for the last 6 months. And the initial brief was, we need to really make this stand out. It should be dynamic, amazing. We're talking about the master template. And we did all of that. But the work that's been delivered now, just last week, with all the stakeholders involved and all the back and forth, you look at it and it's not aligned with the brief. It's not dynamic. They just pull back so much because it has to go through so many layers of alignment. Like the senior manager loves it. The AI team says this doesn't work very well with AI. We have to pull back on the custom stuff. And it did a weird zoom into Mark's face.
Yeah.
I just got scared.
I just got really interested in that bit.
Maybe you should go try that, right?
Yeah. No, but I know what you mean. It's like designed by committee, right? The more people see it, the more watered down it gets, and people are so safe in bigger organizations.
Yeah.
They don't want to rock the boat. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, so I was just curious. You were talking about that creative aspect of building presentations and getting to work with startups and all that possibility, etc. I was wondering, where do you get inspiration from when it comes to ideas, etc.? I know you share on LinkedIn things from marketing and advertising. Are there other places where you get inspiration from?
Everywhere, really. I try to look for inspiration outside our own industry. So if you're working on a real estate deck, don't look for creative real estate presentations, because obviously that's very limited, and you'll probably just end up copying someone else's work. Try to look outside our field, and you can find inspiration from everywhere, really. I don't look too much. The ones I use Cosmos, which is a platform with lots of design inspiration where you can pull ideas from. I try to save down stuff I find interesting and give them a appropriate tag. And then when we're working on stuff, you usually get a feeling for where the company wants to take it, and you start to develop some mood boards and feeling for that, and you run it by the client. And if they like it, then you know you're going the right direction, and you can start playing with the slide.
Damon uses humor
Yeah.
in a really wonderful way. He does it. He uses humor. Okay, I guess we're going in the background. My wife is getting ready for work now.
Yeah, I love the dryness. It was
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
delivery was
you-
really dry. I was just like, oh my god, this is so understated. Are you sure you're not English?
but you got to ask a question, Emma. But he uses humor in a way that is powerful. He uses it to connect with the audience, to disarm the audience, and make himself more relatable. And it ties that in with delivering value in giving them ideas, and you don't need to worry about this, just focus on this, and I have problems with this, da 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 da. But he does it in a really powerful way that connects with the audience, and makes himself more relatable. Humor is a dangerous thing. I've worked with a lot of presenters on big stages, with 8,000 people in the audience, and seen jokes fall flat, especially when you're dealing with international audiences. And you did the Bulgarian taxi cab joke, etc. Those things can fall flat on their face. I'm just curious, has that fallen flat for you sometimes? And how have you learned to use humor? Is it something that just comes naturally?
I would say, to your first question, does it come natural? Yes, it does come natural, because I was always the class clown. I was the guy who tried to get the attention. So I guess that's helped me a bit. But let me say this: being funny in presentations is less about telling jokes or forcing humor, which you mentioned, and more about self-awareness. So, and that ties directly back to why I use it. Audiences like presenters that feel human. They don't force it. So when I see presenters trying to be funny and it just falls flat, it hurts. It hurts a lot to see that. And it becomes even worse when you see that they suffer. So for me, it's gone wrong a million times. And I can show you recordings of Presenters Succeed where you see I do an awkward pause and I say, that was a joke. That's a moment where it fell flat. Nobody laughed. So I'm still trying to learn, how do I handle this without getting caught up? Because my script is people laugh and then I move on. And if people don't laugh, I don't know what to do. So it's definitely happened. And I'm learning each time. I've pulled up slides that I thought, oh, this is going to go, people are going to go, wow, they're going to get it. Like the guy with the apple on the head, the generated slide. And people were just, it was quiet. It was totally quiet. And I didn't get, oh, maybe it wasn't that fun. So if you're not, let me say this, if you're not naturally funny, just be self-aware and poke fun at stuff people can relate to. So if you're giving a keynote talk on how to give good presentations, turn up with a really awful agenda slide, because that's going to get people to laugh. You're going to tell me that you're going to talk about making good presentations and you have an agenda that's just filled with bullet points. You don't even so yeah, use mediums, use video, use stuff that I just mentioned, but don't try to just tell jokes for the sake of it.
And my follow-up question, I suppose, is having a sort of a good deck behind you, does that give you the sort of confidence to then speak a bit more with your own personality and kind of just be yourself a little bit more, knowing that you're not reading from a slide and the slide behind you is doing what it's supposed to do, rather than worrying about, someone can't read it in the back and all of the sort of terrible things that we've seen in other presentations.
100%. And I think there's a very small subset of people who can just wing it. They have the confidence and the charisma, like Gary Vee or Chris Do. Like they can just go up on stage and just wing it. There are a lot of people with lots of experience who can do that, but most people, they need preparation, and I'm definitely one of them. That's why when in one of my talks I said, this is my first or second time on a stage this big. You could literally hear the audience gasp for air because they couldn't believe it. And the only reason they did that is because I was so freaking prepared. I had rehearsed my ass off. My story was good. My slides were great. And I had rehearsed my delivery so many times that it felt natural. And this is the paradox. Like, we rehearse your script so much
Unnatural.
that people think, but that will become unnatural, right? Because you're just no, it gives you so much confidence that you can have those small breaks or audience interactions because you know your script by heart. Does that make sense?
Does totally.
Yeah,
I've
completely.
done exactly that when I've plugged my laptop into the TV in the living room, forced my wife and kids to sit on the sofa and say, let me present to you, and realize all the notes that I've got are 4 times too long, and I needed to just condense them down into say this, say that, mention this, don't forget that, and then use those bullet points. As if you've ever stood up in a wedding and you've got your cue cards that have got bullet points on, don't try and read the cue cards, just take a bullet point and expand upon it. Take a bullet point and expand upon it. And the only way you're going to do that, if it's really, really important, like you say, is to rehearse the hell out of it. And then that way you will come across as natural as possible. And you go in that room and stand up in front of, it could be 20 people or 200 people, but it's still just as nerve-wracking if you've not prepared.
That segues nicely into a question I've got, actually. So in our industry, a lot of people sort of idolize Steve Jobs back in the day, the iPhone presentation. And famously, he did that, came across very natural, but it's because of weeks and weeks of preparation and shouting at people and getting it down and having multiple backups of the presentation and the products and all of that sort of thing. Apart from Steve Jobs, are there any heroes, role models in this industry or in others that inspire you to do great work? Is there people who you admire or look up to?
I relate to comedians a lot. And the only reason is because the good ones are really good at storytelling. Like, I don't care what you think of, for example, Dave Chappelle and his comedy. It doesn't click with many people. But when it comes to storytelling and the way he tells stories and builds you up to thinking, oh, I know where this is going. And then he just throws a switch and it goes a whole nother direction. Like, that guy is a master of storytelling. And I get really inspired by his stand-ups and the way he builds up stories. So I definitely steal stuff from him. Who else? I love how Casey Neistat tells stories through videos. If you look at his videos on YouTube, the way he takes a simple topic like marathon and he creates a 10-minute story that just makes you laugh, cry, and all of it. It's just amazing. So those are the ones that come to mind. I don't really have any other big ones that I look up to.
That's interesting. When I was a kid, I'm pretty sure he's not absolutely not appropriate anymore. But there's this guy called Dave Allen.
Yeah.
This Irish guy. And he just used to sit on stage on a stool with a whiskey.
Dave Allen.
And his story would go on and on and on, but you were so gripped by it. And like you say, it might not always end up where you think it was going to go. It was just fascinating. And the pauses he used to have, just these epic pauses. And you're like, oh my God. But it just felt right. And then he would end up with this hilarious punchline and you just fall about laughing. But yeah, that's interesting. I'll need to check out. I didn't know Casey Neistat, actually. I need to look into him.
I was going to ask if you've had any pushback from clients around using AI in your presentations, and whether there was anything they were concerned about, or anything they've said, oh, please don't do this, or please don't use that AI for this.
So a recent client, she's a global keynote speaker. We were going to create her keynote talk, and in the sample stage, we use lots of AI shots. We use lots of AI generated videos, because her topic is about managing uncertainty and the world that's about to come. How are we going to manage longevity and stuff like that? And that actually shocked me, because the feedback from this on the sample slide was, I don't want any AI generated stuff whatsoever. Just authentic shots. It should feel editorial, journalistic, nothing AI generated, which I understand now, because she explained why. But at first it was like, we have this tool and we can create really good stuff. But it's true that maybe some people have started to see, they can recognize AI generated work already, even if it looks really good. Maybe it looks too polished, right? You generate that image of a woman or a man, and the face is just perfect, and you're like, something is off here, right? I don't know what you feel.
Yeah, and I was in the cinema the other day, and actually on the credit thing, it actually said something about no AI has been used to make this film, and I was shocked that they actually had to put that sort of statement in, because you're watching a film, you're involved in it, and you're kind of in the moment, and I don't really care whether it's AI or not, because it's telling the story. But I thought it was interesting that they were confident enough to make that statement, to say that they hadn't used AI, and I wonder whether that was something that other people were doing in terms of sort of presentation content.
I worked with a guy a while ago, and he didn't do presentations. He did something else graphical, and he started that on his website. He had a big sort of proud stamp, and I'm wondering if it will become like a movement, almost like B Corp, that like we use no AI in this process kind of thing, almost like a matter of pride kind of thing. It's interesting.
Well, I mean, in the past, I've always tried to use a real image as opposed to something that was photoshopped, because there's always that possibility that people are going to see that is a construct and not a real image. And if they're thinking about that rather than what you want them to think about, then you've kind of lost the audience. And I mean, I do see a lot of AI generated images that I think to myself, that would be so much better if you just spent the time to go and find a real image, or at least an image that didn't look so, AI generated, etc. So, but I think Mark's right. There is pushback. I know my kids do not like anything AI generated. They have a really strong reaction to it. Which is kind of funny, because I'm working in it all day long, and on some jobs they pull me in because they know that I can do that. Got those chops. But my kids definitely are having a strong reaction to it.
Same with mine. It's almost it's a pejorative. They're like, anything that looks kind of unbelievable, even if it's true and some fantastic nature shot, they're like, oh god, that looks so AI. Like it's a a bad thing. And it's like, no, dude, it's like the Grand Canyon or something. It's like,
they can spot it.
They think they can.
Yeah. They can, and actually that segues beautifully on to one of my questions, which is on a similar subject, which is, so like back in the day, we could spot a stock image instantly, right? And now the updated version of that is, we can spot an AI generated image instantly. My kids, much like you were saying, Mark, they spot it instantly and, oh, that's so AI. So they're exposed to it probably more than we are, because they're just doom scrolling, and it is like, that is the happy hunting ground for that will do. I mean, I follow a fantastic Instagram chap who put stuff up, very self-deprecating stuff up about my football team, because we've been so terrible this year, and he had the stadium on fire. Now, he used AI deliberately to put the stadium on fire. Dave, he used AI to put the sorry, Dave photobombs every single recording. He he put the stadium on fire, and it was quite clearly an AI-generated image, but it was right for what his content was, if that makes sense. But it wouldn't be right for a professional meeting to have it where it just looks awful. I think the question is, like, how long before we experience a backlash and non-acceptance from the sort of vanilla AI? I had a very interesting point about this the other day. There are people who push the ceiling up, and there are people who drag the floor up, and the AI is dragging the floor up. So, what, to your point earlier, Damon, how do we go about pushing the ceiling up and make sure we're up there to avoid what's happening below our feet?
Yeah, one thing I've seen is that a lot of these new tools that are coming out, like the other day on Twitter, someone shared a new tool where you can generate marketing material, just prompting and sharing a bunch of marketing material. It would generate the social ads and everything. And it looked like obvious AI slop, like crap. But to the guy who did it, who's an engineer, it looked amazing. Back to what I said earlier, the stuff we don't know about, we get fascinated by. Like if a non-designer generates something design related, they will be amazed by the results because they can't see the difference in good typography or fake faces or whatever. So I think with AI, we shouldn't just push it off like this is crap, AI slop. As Andy said, we have the people creating really amazing work. You see it on LinkedIn as well, and then you have the other people who create the slop stuff. And I think this will have its own cycle, just like everything else. Like these, for example, the stock photos that we call cheesy nowadays with the guy sitting in the suit at the beach. Can you imagine that those were great photos at some point in time? Like the reason they're there is because people thought they were good. So it was a huge business at the time, but today it's slop. And the same will happen with AI. It will push the ceiling up. So I think we shouldn't just dismiss it. I think, as I said before, that it makes our job more valuable because teams, right now, they're drowning in tools. They don't know what's good, what's bad. They don't know how to use it. And maybe our work as creative will move more towards creative direction, helping people choosing the right tools and curating their designs than actually creating the stuff. Maybe.
That's I'm really glad you mentioned that, because this is one of our early episodes. We are planning a segment in these episodes that is called Good to Great, or From Good to Great. And we're going to have little video clips that just little tiny things you can do that can get you from good to great. So I'm really glad you mentioned that. Watch this space. So that's it for this episode. Next slide, please. Thank you so much for listening. Very special thanks goes to Damon for his time and valuable insights. Please make sure you give him a follow on LinkedIn. Same goes for Emma, Mark, PK, and myself. You can find us all on there as well. We'd love to hear from you. We're a friendly bunch. Anything you don't like, tell us. Anything you do like, tell everyone else. See you on the next episode of Next Slide, please.